Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Something. Excuse me. Happy Friday.
Something dark side?
No. Something fire. Happy Fire Friday. We haven't actually had a fire tutorial in a while because we've had balls and things to prepare for. So I'm excited, and I have a really cute. Heather can verify that it's a really cute fire tutorial for next week. Okay, so now the chat thing is working. Okay, so some of you popped on this afternoon during my testing stream, even though I said nothing to see here. There were like 8 or 9 people on there.
That's really the magic.
Right? Seriously, I should just name all of my streams nothing to see here. But so so those of you, Corvus specifically, for those of you who stream, hi Tanya, she back, yay! See, but it didn't catch that one. So okay, so the problem I'm having, and I'm just gonna try and crowdsource this one real quick and get a couple more brains working on it. Don't need to fix it tonight. Spent 5 hours trying to fix it today. Did not succeed. But so with the Restream program comes a chat aggregator, and what it's supposed to do is pull all of the chats from all the channels and put them all in a nice little row. You know, coded by platform so I can see what everybody says. And it's not working right. It's catching about 1 in 3 chats from Twitch and about 1 in 10 from Facebook. I have not been able to find another chat aggregator that works with both Facebook, with Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube, all 3 of those platforms, and allows me to reply back to chats. So if anybody has a line on anything like that, preferably that is free or inexpensive, because I did find one program, it was $799. I was like, I don't think that's really not in the budget. So anyway, if anybody has a line on anything like that, please go ahead and whisper it to me, or go ahead and whisper it to Heather, because I'm crap at checking my whispers. Or if you've got my phone number, you can text me or you can Facebook message us. I'm going to do more research tonight, because the thing that I tried was I uninstalled everything from Restream and I reinstalled everything into Restream, and it still isn't working. So anyway, that makes this a really good project for tonight, because I get to smash things, and it's been a day where I need to smash things. So this is our scrap silver. Hi, speaking of silver, hi Silver. Scrap silver necklace. So this is something that you can do, because most of us who do beading or do metalwork, most of us have a container of scrap silver because you don't want to throw it away. But you know, unless you're working on a very grand scale, sending your silver off to be recycled is usually more trouble than it's worth. So this is something you can do to recycle the silver that you have into a usable form, make a cool necklace, and not have to worry about sending it in. So tools and supplies for this evening's class, you're going to need all your soldering stuff. Just you wait till next week, because you're going to need every tool on the dang planet next week. This week you only need half of the tools on the dang planet. So all your soldering stuff, solder board, torch, flux, which is what I'm gesturing with for some reason, solder pick, tweezers. I'm going to skip the pickle, but you can do, you can pickle it in a pickle pot if you want to. My broadcasting software is OBS, Corvus. And in addition to all your soldering stuff, you're going to need a hammer and a bench block. And I'm using a household hammer because you need chasing hammer's not going to quite cut it with this. Like, you need to smash the crap. That was before 7:30. Smash the crap out of your silver. You're going to need some extra easy solder, because these babies are big, and so they're difficult to solder with anything else, with any other density of solder. So I'm going to be using extra easy today. You're going to need your pliers, round nose, chain nose, wire cutters, and then At some point, I'm going to need to get up and get a couple of soldered rings. And then, um, 4mm in sterling. Okay. Silver only feels slightly bright. I'm only going to smash you a little bit silver. Not into oblivion. It caught Silver's comment, but it didn't catch Corvus's comment before. It didn't catch the 3 comments before that. Like, it's 2, please. Yes.
I might bring another one just in case something else.
What? I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, and then you need some scrap silver. So Sharon Hammer generously, thank you, donated. Sharon Hammer generously donated some scrap silver to us, which is awesome. But you can also do this with scrap silver wire, sheet, like all the little bits that you can't do anything else with are really great for this project. So I'm going to start by just cutting up my silver and making a couple of little piles. Now you can make as many granules as you want at a time, and you don't have to use all of these granules on this project. So if you're just like, I'm gonna melt some shit today, then go for it. And you can always put those aside and use them later. Now I like my granules to be different sizes, so I'm gonna try and make some different volumes of silver on my board. I'm gonna try some big ones, some little ones, and I also want to try making a copper one. Because I tried on my sample necklace, I tried to like polish up, I oxidized it, and then I tried to polish up one of the silver ones, and it just kind of looked a little bit weird. So I want to see what it looks like if I do one that's a completely different color. And I'm doing copper because I don't want to have to worry about super pickling it. Also, let's go ahead and move the cord behind the light so that I don't melt it, because we all know how good my track record is with that. This is a very large chunk of copper that I cut. Maybe a little too much chunk. I do want the copper one to be bigger, but it doesn't need to be like 5 times the size. Okay, so back to cutting. So I am, for the sake of time, I'm going to do 5, I think. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so there's 5. So our first task is going to be to melt them. Now, it's a little bit trickier than you might think, because what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to melt them and then let them cool a little bit, but not too much, and then pick them up with the tweezers and move them onto my bench block to cool. If I try and pick them up too soon, they're going to be too molten, and all my tweezers are going to do is squish them. But if I leave them too late, they're going to stick to the solder board, and then I'm going to have to sand that crap off the back of them, which I really don't want to do. So we're going to see how my timing is. On this, you don't really need to flux these. You're just going to go at them with your torch. So the igniter on my torch is still broken, hence the super high-tech pink Bic lighter. You do want to make sure your torch is full when you're doing this, because it is going to take a fair amount of heat to melt these guys. So I'm just going to start with this one. So melting silver is really fun and cool because of surface tension. It will suck itself up into a little ball. Put the chat on top. Without you having to do anything. Okay, I tried the SE Live plugin, but I couldn't make it work. So the answer is yes, but no. Okay, so there you go. Did you see it? Now it's a ball, aka a granule. And if you want to make it into a full sphere, all right. So then I just want to. So see, it's still kind of red and molten, I'm just going to drop it on my bench block, and that's going to help it cool down faster. All right, on to the next one. So just heat it, heat it, heat it, heat it. And it's going to get all molten. And then look at it. It just kind of like swoop into a ball. It's so fun. So the optimal time for picking up is when the red just starts to dull a bit and get kind of the gray skin on top of it. That's when you want to grab them. I know, it's so fun. Like, melting balls of silver is just... It's like my dad says that they used to give them mercury to play with at the dentist's office, and I imagine it's the same kind of fun. So those were all single pieces, but this one's a pile of little bits, so you can totally melt a pile of little scraps. The thing is, they have to be touching, or they won't make one ball. But you could totally do this with a pile of sterling silver wire. Alright, and then I'm going to try and melt this big copper mama. See how that goes for me. Well, Restream is the one that's not working, Corvus. That's the chat aggregator I'm currently using, and it's only catching like every third comment. And I don't know if anybody's on the other side right now, but it's not displayed me anything from the other side thus far this evening. Melting copper proving to be difficult. Possibly this was a bad idea. Okay, that was a bad idea. So, no more copper. Copper can go away and think about what it did, and I'm cutting another piece of silver. Sorry, silver. See? That one showed up, but nothing has showed up since Silver's comment about only feeling slightly threatened.
It's so
Yay! Thank you, Lori. That's awesome of you. We appreciate that so very much. Also, I used Sharon's scrap silver to make part of next week's project, which I'm so excited about. It's so cute. We'll take newbies from anywhere. Okay, so we're just going to pretend I did not have that ill-fated idea with the copper, and we're going to melt this piece of silver instead. Oh, look how beautiful, and look how it's being have. Yay! Now, your granules that you make from sterling silver, a lot of times will have kind of a pebbly surface to them. I don't know if you can see that because I've got the focal distance set all the way down here, but they'll have kind of a pebbly surface, and they're not always perfectly round. If you want perfectly round, perfectly smooth granules, use fine silver. And just to reiterate the difference, fine silver is 0.999, it's 99.9% pure silver. Sterling silver is 0.975, 97.5% silver. The remainder of that alloy is typically copper. So the copper content leads to, again, a little bit of irregularity in the surface. I like that. I think it's cool. Plus, we're going to smash the living daylights out of this in a little bit, so it really won't matter. But that's just when making granules in general, that's just something to know. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay these out on my solder board in the pattern I want to solder them in. So I could just make like a blob of them if I wanted to. Which I kind of think I might be feeling blobby. Ooh, and then I need that third soldered ring because then I'm going to hang something from this. So it's going to be the centerpiece of the necklace. So there's my little blob. And now I'm going to solder all of my little blob bits together, and then I'm going to solder my components on. Or solder my soldered rings on. So I'm going to flux this really. There's a clog in my solder dropper, and so like this tiny little microscopic stream of, my flux dropper, this tiny little microscopic stream of flux just like shot right into my drawers. It's pretty funny. Okay, so I've fluxed all of this, and you know what, let me see if I can get some zoom action going on. Not the platform, but the actual thing that you do with the camera. Let's see, so tomorrow night is freeform. So I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I'm going to try and do something fun. I might actually do a resin project because I have one that's a repair that I have to do. Okay, so there are my granules. I think that might be at that zoom level the best the focus is going to get. Yeah, it's not getting any better. Nope, that's worse. All right, I think we're gonna have to, I think that's as good as we're gonna get at the moment. But you actually can see now that I have managed to zoom in, you can see the kind of pebbly surface of some of these. Like this one turned out pretty smooth, but this one is fairly textured. So, you know, again, with the sterling, you never quite know what you're gonna get. So now I'm gonna grab my extra easy solder, and I'm gonna cut myself some pieces of it, and I'm gonna do pick transfer tonight because I find it easier to adjust to where the solder wants to flow. And of course, you want to make sure that everything is contacting everything else, because if you don't have contact, then your solder's not going to do what you want it to do. So I'm going to start with, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I'm going to cut myself about 10 pieces of solder just because I have a tendency to lose them. And again, this is extra easy solder. Chatterino, I have not. That did not come up in my research. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Because I don't need it to be linked to OBS or Restream or anything else. Like if it's a completely separate app, I'm fine with that. I just need to be able to plug my platforms in there, and then I need to be able to talk back, you know, write back, type back. You know what I mean? Because there was one that I looked into today, and it was like, well, you can see all of them, but you can't type back. I'm like, well, what's the point? Okay, so I've got all of my little pieces of solder. They're all over here off camera, and I'm just going to give them all a fluxing. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and solder these babies together. So I'm turning on my torch. So when I solder, I've got my torch in my left hand and my pick in my right hand because I need more dexterity with my pick than with my torch. So I'm just going to ball up a piece of solder and pick it up on my solder pick. You can see it right there. And then I'm just going to pick a joint, keep this all up, and just pick a joint and drop that solder off. So the way you get the solder off the pick is you heat the metal, make the metal hotter than the pick. Since the solder flows towards heat, it will naturally want to come off the pick and stick to the metal. So what I'm doing is I had one flow unintentionally, but what I'm trying to do here is just kind of drop off and position these balls of solder, and then I'm gonna run the torch over it again to flow everything. That's the plan. So I have one here. Oh, I don't have one here. I have one here. So I need to go here and here. And then we're going to flow all of those before I try and put my rings on, because it's going to take a lot of heat to flow all of this solder, and that's just going to melt my rings into oblivion, which is of course not the goal. Now you may notice, I'm going to turn off my torch for a second, you may notice that I haven't pickled this, that this is all very dirty metal. So there are a lot of different schools about pickling, and most American trained jewelers pickle so much. Like, they'll pickle the metal before they start, and then they'll pickle the metal after. Like, so if I'd been doing this project the way that a classically trained American jeweler would do it, I would have pickled the metal before I began, and I would have washed my hands thoroughly to make sure there was no oil on my hands. And then I would have cut all my pieces, and then I would have balled them up, and then I would have pickled them all again before I arranged them and tried to solder them together. Jewelers in Europe are not so obsessive about pickling, and I get the obsessiveness because a small... Oh, Lord. Wait, it's not even casting to Facebook? Son of a mother pus bucket. Oh. That's my fault. So, what happened was, that explains my notes commenting from Facebook. Yeah. So what happened was, in an attempt to fix the chat aggregator, which did not work, I uninstalled everything from Restream and then reinstalled everything from Restream. But it's now listed in a different order, and I wasn't paying attention. So I turned on YouTube, because it's three in a row, and it used to be Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and I just now realized when you said that, Sharon, that now it's YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. So I never turned Facebook on. That is 100%. That one's my bad. That one is not, that cannot be blamed on technology. That is operator error. What? I don't know. Because What's Her Bucket flustered me. We had a customer who walked in at like 5:59. She was like, well, can I just stay after you close so I can string this necklace? It's like, what? So anyway. So, noted for tomorrow. Sorry about that, Sharon. I did not mean to leave you out. But I melted all your silver. So these little balls are your silver melted down. Yay! So I melted it all down into granules. I arranged it. Oh, okay, yeah, so pickling. So not that I was trained by European, because I wasn't. I'm just lazy, is what it comes down to. I just don't have it in me to like walk to the pickle pot that many times. Like, I don't even have it in me most of the time to get the pickle pot out of the back room. So I will tend to solder on dirty metal more than is possibly advisable. I will say that flux is a huge factor in that. Like, if your metal is dirty, you need to flux it thoroughly. But if you do that, you can get away with a lot of stuff. All right, so now we're going to try and solder these babies together. Now that I've said that, watch this not work. So I'm going to hold my pick just in case I need to nudge anything. And I'm just going to heat this. That's all my flux. And just keep heating, slow and steady. You don't want to go super duper fast, because then you're not really heating anything. You're just moving the flame around. And you really want to, like, this is a lot of metal. I realize it doesn't look like it, but there's a large volume of metal here. So you need to heat it really thoroughly, and you want to make sure that that solder connects. See, do you see how it just jumped? That's what we want. This joint, not so much. That joint's fine. That joint's fine. So this one needs some TLC and this one needs some TLC. So I'm actually going to grab another piece of solder because mine kind of disappeared. And we're just going to, nope, come on. Just going to make sure there's contact. Okay, good. So now it's just this joint down here. That is a bit of a problem. And that part of that is because now that everything else is soldered together, there really isn't contact, so I'm probably, there we go, gonna need to nudge it, which I just did. Okay, so that's my piece. And I wanna make sure I get that off before it sticks. Okay, now I'm gonna hammer the crap out of this. And then I'm gonna put my rings on. So I'm going to move my soldering station. I'm going to put this on my bench block. I'm going to make scorch marks on my work surface, because apparently that's what I'm doing. All right, so that's my piece. I'm going to let it cool for just a minute before I start hammering it, because if it happens to skip off my bench block while I'm hammering it, I don't want it to be hot when it does that. The great thing about, yep, still hot. And if I had brought quench water, I could quench it, but of course I didn't. The great thing about the steel bench blocks is they will leach the heat out from your piece fairly quickly. But yeah, I do not want that skittering off into my lap and burning a hole in my jeans. Okay, that's warm but not burning hot anymore. So now I'm going to take my household hammer and I'm just going to flatten this puppy. Probably should have muted that. Sorry, y'all. Okay, so now I have flattened. And I'm going to turn it over and hammer it just a little bit on the other side, which is already flat. All right, so now I have my flattened piece of cool scrap silver stuff. So now I'm going to go back to my soldering board and I'm going to put my rings on there. And the reason that I hammered before I put my rings on is because there's a good chance if I had put the rings on first that the force of the hammering, despite, me having made a good solder joint, the force of the hammering would have just popped them off, which we don't want. Okay, so there's that. So now I'm going to grab the rings that Heather so generously got for me, and I'm going to position them And notice I'm putting my piece a little bit on top of them. That's just going to make it a bit easier for them to adhere and a bit more stable because they've got more contact area if they're tucked behind than if you just kind of tack them on the sides. And this is my third one because I've decided that this is going to be a connector. Sometimes it just feels like playing Operation. There we go. A game which, unsurprisingly, I was always very good at. Operation and Jenga. Good at both of those games. Alright, so now we're going to flux. And I've definitely become like a 100% liquid flux convert from paste flux. I used to be hardcore paste flux person. And because I'd used liquid flux years and years ago and not happy with it. But what I've discovered recently is that I'm also not happy with the fact that when you're using paste flux, everything shifts around when you paint it on. So I have rediscovered, I've also using a different kind of flux. It's called self-pickling, though that's a bit of a misnomer because it doesn't actually pickle itself. But I trained with patterns, which I didn't really like, but this one is, I think, a little bit easier to use. So anyway, that's my flux spiel. Okay, so now I've got 3 pieces of solder that are cut, so I'm going to solder on my 3 rings. I just got 1 piece that is balled up on my pick, and I'm gonna drop it off right here, because what I want it to do is flow underneath. Let's see. There we go. Okay, did you see it connect? Also, I may have melted my ring a little bit. We're just not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Bruno. Okay, I need to rotate this because I can't see what I'm doing. All right. 1 out of 3. Not good. Not a good track record. Okay, so I'm going to try and do this other way, which I probably should have done in the first place, which is doing it with the front side down. I'm just trade my pick out for tweezers. And I'm going to do it this way instead. Oh, and that's toast. He did. Now what I didn't do is I didn't flex the back of this, and that's definitely part of the reason I'm having difficulties here. So we're just going to do that again. We're going to take one of my backup jump rings and a little bit more solder, which is in here. I think what's going to happen, because we're coming up on the 1 hour mark, is I'm going to do all the finishing of this with the Dremel, and then I'll actually put together the necklace tomorrow night during freeform. No. Okay, so yes, I will talk about flux as I am soldering this. So flux, uh, the word flux comes from the Latin word for flow, and what flux does is it creates a protective coating on your metal so that it doesn't get an oxide layer on it. Because if your metal has a layer of oxide on it, it can be difficult, verging on impossible, to get solder to flow. So what the flux does is it creates an oxide-free section of your metal that you can then flow your solder on. There are a ton of different kinds of flux. So you used to always see me using paste flux that I put on with a paintbrush. And like I said, now I've moved to liquid flux that I put on with a dropper bottle that I like much better because everything doesn't scoot around on me. There are spray fluxes that are liquid, so you gotta find what works best for you, obviously. Um, but regardless of whether your flux is paste or liquid or spray or anything else, the purpose remains the same. The purpose is to keep your metal from oxidizing so that your solder will flow. All right, and that, folks, is what I should have done all along, was done it on the back side instead of the front side. So live and learn. So I'm going to once again put this on my bench block to cool down, and then I'm going to start using some power tools. So I'm going to clean this up with a sanding disc and then a yellow wheel and a blue wheel, and then I'm going to I don't think I'm going to oxidize it. I wasn't super thrilled with the way the oxide looked on my sample, so I don't think I'm going to oxidize it, but I might high polish one of the pieces, which means that I need another thing. If y'all have never used this stuff to high polish metal, it is the bomb. You get it at the auto parts store, and it will bling anything up in like 2 seconds flat. Okay, I should be done soldering, so that can go up there. That can go up there. I'm just waiting for this to be cool enough for me to touch it without, burning myself. Meanwhile, I'm going to start with my sanding disc. So I just have a regular fine sanding disc that I'm going to go ahead and put in my Dremel. And the first thing I'm going to do is just give this whole thing a good sand, a good once over sanding. I'm going to flatten this front, and then I'm going to clean up the back of it as well. So this one, the Mother's Mag, and aluminum polish, it's fan-freaking-tastic. And I'll show you how well it works in a couple minutes. Alright, now that this is cool enough for me to handle, I'm going to start with sanding, and yes, I should be wearing a mask. You guys are right. Do I have a mask is a different question. I found one. Okay, so safety first, and we all know that I'm sometimes crap at safety first, but if you're going to be putting particulates of metal in the air, you should be wearing a respirator of some kind. So this is me being responsible. Also, this is my eye itching. Alright. So now I should be wearing gloves, but that's okay. Alright, so now I'm just going to take this and I'm going to start sanding it. Okay, yeah. Need gloves. That's hot. You know, friction makes things warm. Laws of thermodynamics and all of that. So I'm just sanding that and flattening it out. So my goal here is to get a nice flat surface on these. Yeah, see, there's a few pits there, but more like that. Like, that's what I'm going for. Alright, so... Ow. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with the front, so now I'm going to flip it over, and I'm just going to clean up the back. And my goal at this point is just to kind of get rid of all the fire scale. I'm sorry, I'm gonna change this camera angle because it's really hard to show things. I don't quite know what I was thinking. So, getting there. And I'm also using this to kind of smooth down those joints where my rings meet my pendant. The goal is just to make the back look a little bit more intentional. And then I can go around the edges as well. It won't right now, Corvus, just because of time. It could though. I definitely thought about it. Okay, so this is my sanded piece. That's the back. That's the front. So again, we're just kind of going for flattening the surface at this point. Now I'm going to switch to my Dedico yellow wheel, which is one of my favorite pre-polishes. So it's this is what's called a radial bristle disc. 3M makes these. Can y'all hear me okay in the mask? I'm hoping. So 3M makes these and Dedico makes these. They're, as far as I can tell, indistinguishable from one another. Excellent. So this is actually, they're single discs, and this is actually 5 of them stacked up on a mandrel. So the cool thing about it is you can, yay! The cool thing about it is you can actually customize the size of your polishing wheel by how many discs you stack. So I'm just going to go over my surface with my yellow wheel. So what it's going to do is it's going to start taking that kind of harsh sanded finish, and it's just going to soften it a bit to be more of like a satin finish. Okay, and this is pretty much kind of a once-over process, so you don't have to be too thorough about this. But then I am going to use the wheel to clean up the fire scale and crap on the outside. And this is really nice because since it's a radial bristle, it'll get into all those nooks and crannies that my sanding wheel wouldn't get into because it's not flexible. Also make sure you're, holding it. And I'm going to use it on the back as well because there's just a couple of chunks of fire scale that I could not get to with the sanding disc just because of mechanics. Alright, so that is my yellow wheel finish. And now I'm going to go to my blue wheel finish, which is just a little bit of a finer finish. And then I'll use my mother's polish to give it a high shine. I'm probably just going to high shine the whole thing. That's kind of where my brain's going. So at this point, I'm going to consider myself done with the back. I don't need to do anything else with the back unless I really want to. So I'm going to concentrate on the front. So now I'm going to blue wheel the front. So what that's going to do is it's going to take that yellow wheel finish and it's going to make it even softer. So you got a really nice fine satin finish on there, and you don't have any tool marks. You don't have the scratch marks from the sanding wheel anymore. So I'm just blue wheeling the whole thing. Alright, so that's my blue wheel finish. This is a nice satin finish. And lots of people will stop there, and oftentimes that's me. But I want to show you the mother's polish and how cool it is. So these Corvus are called radial bristle discs, and they come singly. So my yellow wheel was like 5 of them stacked up. This is, I think, 4 of them stacked up. So you buy the discs and you buy the mandrels separately. And see how there's a little screw on the top? That's what you use to load the discs on the mandrels. And it is worth noting that the discs are directional. So one of the best things anyone ever told me about loading them onto the mandrels is that you load them with the brand name facing upwards. And then they're always going to go the right direction. And they're different grits, and I am embarrassed to say I don't actually know what grit yellow is and what grit blue is. I just know that yellow is coarser and blue is finer. Okay, so now we're going to take our super floofy felt buff, and we're going to put that in our Dremel. And then we're going to take our mother's polish and we're just going to grab a little bit of it on a paintbrush or on your finger. You don't need a lot. So just a tiny, tiny little bit. And I'm going to just put that, I'm going to spread that on my surface. Like that's actually definitely more than I need. So I'm just going to spread it on my surface, kind of like I'm frosting a cake. And then we're going to take the Floofy Buff. Yeah, no, this is, yeah, you can, you stack them. You stack them on the mandrel, and that way you can actually customize how wide this is. So if you're trying to get into teeny tiny little spaces, 1 or 2 is fine. But if you want to cover a lot of area, I usually do about 5. Okay, so now magic happens. Alright, so I'm going to take my Floofy Buff, and I'm just going to start polishing. Right, look at that. Look at that mirror finish. Like, shut the front door. And like classically trained jewelers will be going through like 7 different grades of rouge. And literally, you get this stuff at the auto parts store. It's like $15 or something crazy like that. And it just, like, look at that. Look at how shiny it is. It's freaking nuts. And I have yet to find a metal that this stuff doesn't work on. Alright, there we go. It is literally now as shiny as my bench block is. Ah, whew. Yeah, I discovered this stuff. I was doing some research for a consulting client about mirror finishing, and I found all this stuff about the 17 different kinds of rouge. And then there was this dude who was making coin rings on the internet, and he used this, and I was like, that is amazing. So yeah, so now I've got a nice mirror finished. Usually you'll get some kind of schmutz from the polishing compound in the crevices. So what I'm gonna do after stream is I'm just gonna take this back and wash it with some soap and a brush. Because the brush isn't gonna hurt anything. And then tomorrow night I will be putting this together into a necklace. Like I said, it's gonna be a Y connector. So I'm gonna do a chain from here and here, and I'm gonna hang something from there. But yeah, this stuff, and you can get it from the auto parts store. You can also get it from Amazon, and I will, that's upside down. I will try and remember, or no, I will not try and remember. I will, as soon as I get off stream, post a photo of this in Discord. All right, so that is it. That's our scrap sterling necklace slash pendant slash component slash whatever you want to make it into. Again, this one I decided is going to be a component. And I might actually bring my sample in tomorrow as well and polish it up because I think I like this much better than the oxidized. The oxidized seemed like a good idea at the time, but it just wound up kind of looking dingy and not really pretty. So I'm going to finish up this necklace tomorrow night on Discord. There will be wire wrapping involved, and I might even give you guys a sneak preview of next week's Fire Friday project. But yeah, so there we go. I mean, like literally, well, it won't focus, but it's like you can see everything in it. It is literally a mirror finish. It's pretty awesome. All right, so that's it for tonight's Fire Friday tutorial. I sanded the crap out of my thumb. Ow. Thank you guys so much for joining me for Fire Friday. We will at some point get the chat fixed. We'll talk to Corvus about that. Don't forget, if you are not part of the Discord, go ahead and join. And I will see you all back on this channel, twitch.tv/beadingdream, tomorrow at 6:30 to finish this baby up. Thanks, everyone, and good night.